Hello, it's sunny. So I thought I'd make a video while there's actual sunlight coming into my study. My hair's a bit wet though. I'm going to sit here with the cat, Socky. I know, complain, complain. But you know, if you wanted leaving alone all day, you could just stay in bed and no one would bother you. But he likes to sit here on my armchair while I'm working, don't you? Right, now, a smallish book haul, but a very nice book haul from Saturday and the Macclesfield Book Festival. I've gone on about that a lot, I know. It was good fun. And nice to do something nice following our adventures in LA. But it's funny to go from one Saturday being at that big convention and the following Saturday in a freezing cold church hall in Macclesfield. But it was fun, wasn't it, Socks? Socks hears about all these adventures, but he stays at home. Anyway, books came our way. Jeremy found a picture book he thought I'd like. There was stalls in different genres in each of the boxy pews in this church. This is Tyrone the Horrible. Hippo books from the 80s, this. Oh, this is nice, though. He's quite right. I do like it. And the dinosaurs look like my dinosaur, which keeps watch when I work. Look, Socks. He doesn't recognise the existence of dinosaurs. Are you a creationist? Oh, look at them. Look, Socks. I do like picture books. And one of these Usborne books from the... I'm guessing this is actually 80s. Usborne books were so beautifully made. They were the ones who made the ghost books and the monster books and the UFO books that we treasured as kids. 1980. This is a special one because it's all about the things inside your garden. And actually looking at these illustrations, this is something we had at school. I think I drew pictures from this. Oh, he's off. He gets offended at the mention of wildlife creatures, or maybe he's just hungry. He wants to go and attack some wildlife. And there's the birds. It's like a kind of menu for you, Socks. He calls birds flying lollies. It's the garden at night. That's what he was running out to every now and again through the night last night. We've had a few nights of very noisy foxes, actually. Thinking about it, like screaming foxes. Right, so there was those, and then this very nice copy of Sue Townsend's novel, The Queen and I, which I was talking about recently. This is a beautiful hardback copy. And I was thinking, it was years ago that I read this. It's the novel about the royal family, about the UK becoming a republic and the royal family being sent off to live on a council estate. They're still the royal family and everybody still likes them, but they have to live on a council estate and live the same as everybody else. You know, as it should be, I think. And let the homeless live in Buckingham Palace and all those places. I've always thought that. I don't care if it sounds childish and utopian, it should happen. And I looked, and it was 1992. It's actually a first edition, a well-loved first edition, a well-read first edition. My copy is long gone. It was a book club edition. But 92, that makes it 33 years ago that I read this. In 92, I was living in a tiny house on Nunn Street in Lancaster. I think that's right. And I was doing my PhD and I was writing Marked for Life, I think. And I joined the book club, QPD book club it was called, and you got a certain number of books in trade paperback very cheaply. And then they hooked you in and you had to keep buying their monthly choices, which soon became a pain in the arse. But this was one of the early things I chose and I loved it. I loved Sue Townsend. I don't think I valued her voice enough when she was alive. And looking back, she was an amazing writer. I mean, back when I was 13, 14, the Adrian Mole books were the big thing at school. And yeah, they stayed with me a long time, and I reread them in recent years, and they're classics. They're classics. They're the same as Diary of a Nobody, or Diary of a... Actually, these are all diary novels of a provincial lady. Those kind of comic turns. Yeah, anyway. And then a Puffin book that I hadn't heard of, in beautiful condition, The Night Watch Winter by Jenny Overton, with one of those covers that looks like a Susan Cooper novel. And there's a touch of fantasy about this too. Oh, Jeremy, watch out. He's coming from the... I'm going to cover up the doorway with the book. I think he's padding about in the nude. We can't have that on YouTube. He's just come from the shower. Have you gone? It's not one of those kinds of video channels. Anyway, Veronica's ears were stopped with earth, her eyes blinded with it, a great plug of it crammed in her throat. The ground had just given way beneath her feet, not at all what she bargained for when she agreed to come exploring the old smugglers' paths, not to mention the strange gypsy woman and her troubles with the Easter play. Indeed, for a nervous girl like Veronica, that winter turned out to be very exciting indeed. It does sound like a kind of Dark is Rising sort of adventure. Even the font is... that sounds so stupid. Is nostalgic. Anyway, a Puffin I'd never heard of. And then I met new people, local writers from that area. There was Joy Winkler, who's a local poet, and I bought one of her books, but that's a present, so I can't show that. But her husband, John Winkler, and his novel, Unbidden. It's a family novel about the war and the German side of his family. So that sounded really interesting. What was lovely about the whole festival was the writers there swapped books with each other. When you went to go and buy something, you ended up doing a swap. And that was nice, signing each other's books and swapping over. Also there was Charles Heathcote, who appeared on... Actually, they all appeared on an earlier video. Charles has his own video channel on YouTube. And I've heard him talk about this before. Our Doris, which is the first in a series, and I thought it sounds just my kind of thing. The Partridge Muse Women's Institute have announced a garden safari, and Doris Copeland, pillar of the community with a tenure as Maria in The Sound of Music that involved an awful gastrointestinal bug, plans on securing her position as fifth house. Join her as she battles ne'er-do-well slugs, searches for the perfect artisan sausage, and comes against her mortal enemy Janice Dooley of Little Street, all whilst maintaining a perfect silver-crinned hairstyle. Told from the perspective of a long-suffering husband, Harold, a man who would be content to sit at home watching reruns of Ground Force. This is the first book of monologues featuring our Doris. Reminds me a bit, just dipping in and looking at bits, of Ladies of Letters, one of my all-time favourites from Radio 4. So we'll see how this is. But really pleased to meet that gang. It was all a really good gang, actually, on Saturday. We had a good laugh and a good time, and we all sold books, I think. So since over the weekend, I got to do some reading at last. I did no reading hardly at all in LA, which was really funny, because I read all the time. On the plane, I didn't read. I couldn't quite focus. I watched films instead, and watched 5 films there and 5 films flying back. I filled up all my time with movies. Since I've been back, I've read Cress Watercress, Gregory Maguire's kids' book from a couple of years ago. I showed this the other day. I really revelled in the illustrations by David Litchfield, who's actually from the UK, it turns out. They're just stunning. I really like them. And as I said, it's a kind of Animals of Farthing Wood type book, and with a touch of Watership Down maybe. And some very funny side characters, like the skunk who keeps dyeing her hair, what she called Lady Cabbage, and she's appallingly snobby and wears another creature around her neck. I forget what she wears, a chinchilla around her neck, chained by his feet, that eventually gets liberated. But look at those colours. There's something powerfully nostalgic about that already. I'm not sure why. It must remind me of something. There's a kind of dullish bit in the middle. So brutal with my reading. When it kind of struggles on, it treads water a bit in the middle, like lots of books do. But the ending really pulls it together, and all those characters get to bond in a kind of, what do they call it these days? Found family. And even the characters who are awful expose wounded or pitiable or tender sides to their characters. And it's a book about mourning and losing a parent. It's a book about outcasts and bringing them in or leaving them out still if they want to stay out of the circle. And a book about growing up. I hope there'll be a sequel. I am hopeless. I can't just enjoy a book for its own sake. I get towards the end and I want there to be a sequel, and I go looking if they're old enough to see if there is a sequel advertised online. Sometimes just one book is enough. It should be enough. So maybe that's just going to be a standalone. We'll see. I move straight on to Anne Tyler's new book, 3 Days in June, which came out while we were in the States, and I've had on order for ages and ages. It's one of her slimmer books, just 160 odd pages, so it's more like the early 60s books that she did, like A Slipping Down Life or The Tin Can Tree, books that were succinct and belonged really to one character over a short period of time. The first book that she did in whatever it was, 64, 65, If Morning Ever Comes, belongs to one character returning home, and we see his small town through his eyes again. One of the first books by her that I read, actually. I started reading Anne Tyler in 1990. I was alerted to her by my first boyfriend, Gene, who is American, and I remember going out and him buying from the new Waterstones in our town, Amy Tan's Joy Luck Club and Anne Tyler's Breathing Lessons, and I was intrigued by both. They were both prize winners at that point, I think, and he snapped them up, having looked forward to them, and I read both, and I was just blown away. These were contemporary novels that were family novels, full of gossip and big family events and family history and the fabric of people's lives, and a very good sense of place. Baltimore for Anne Tyler and San Francisco for Amy Tan. And it set me off on all these years of reading Anne Tyler especially, and I've read everything. Most of her books I've read more than once. Some of them I've read a ridiculous number of times. There's something very smooth about her writing, deceptively smooth, so people think it's somehow easily achieved. She has, especially in the books which are first person, this amazing knack of just making you feel as if someone is chatting to you, gossiping to you. And this one is about a wedding. Characters it's a divorced couple who are watching their daughter get married. They're in their early 60s, and which makes them kind of, I suppose, people who were born in the very early 1960s, which is amazing. They're the kind of babies of her early novels. I've watched her characters grow older over the years. When I began reading her characters, actually no, she would have middle-aged to old characters there. In fact, the couple at the heart of this remind me very much of the couple at the heart of Breathing Lessons, kind of befuddled grandparents trying to survive in this modern day. But of course the modern day then was 89, when these pensioners would have been 1920. 21. She's moving on with the decades, but she can embody people of all ages. She always has been able to do that, which is essential in a novelist of the family, I think. Her chapters that she does in other books from the point of view of kids as they explore the world. I'm thinking of the orphaned kids in Saint Maybe. Those are stunning, but I love her middle-aged people as well, who kind of live in quiet despair often and kind of doughtily go about their business, kind of defying the world to change around them. Yeah, I've always enjoyed her, always will. Even though this is the kind of what's at stake is a happy wedding and a happy marriage, which is kind of dull, I think, as something at the centre of a novel. But I felt the same, didn't I, last year about Rainbow Rowell and Slow Dance, which I was disappointed with at first, but gradually fell in love with, and it was one of my favourite books of the year. So even a big wedding novel is salvageable for me. So I'm halfway through this. It just kind of slipped by effortlessly, like a gigantic bar of Galaxy chocolate, which is the closest thing I can think of to reading Anne Tyler. It's like eating Galaxy chocolate. And anybody who knows that chocolate will know what I mean, hopefully. Okay, that's a reading update and a small haul update. I'm getting back into my groove of doing things back at home after all the excitement of last week and the week before in our adventures. I'm working on a draft of something again, about to start something new, hopefully next week, that needs doing, a script, and getting back into the pattern of reading. But this afternoon it's sunny. I've got to go out and post things and maybe have a bimble around the shops. Bimble is my friend Ryland's word. It's his verb for, I suppose, kind of not aimlessly pottering, kind of aimfully pottering about the place, if that makes sense. Anyway, I'm going to say goodbye. Socks has gone, so he can't say goodbye. He will pass on his best wishes, I'm sure. Nothing else to tell you just yet. I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.